They came back like nothing happened. The doorbell rang at 8:17 p.m. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, my son was standing there, with suitcases. Behind him, his wife adjusted her scarf and avoided my eyes. And in that moment, I lost my position in my own home. Because my son didn't say, "Mom, can we come in?" He said, "We're staying." Pause. Not asking. Telling. I stepped aside slowly. One question burned inside me. Why now? I hadn't seen them in 8 months. 8 months since they moved out in a storm of insults and slammed doors. 8 months since my daughter-in-law looked me in the eye and said, "You need to learn boundaries." Boundaries. In the house I paid for. I stayed quiet then. For peace. I always stayed quiet for peace. That was my mistake. They rolled their suitcases across my floor like they still owned it. My son walked toward the guest room without waiting. His wife followed. No explanation. No apology. Just presence. That was the second shock. Because as they passed me, I smelled something familiar. My son's cologne. The one I gave him last Christmas. The Christmas they skipped. "You're not even going to tell me what's happening?" I asked. He stopped halfway down the hallway. Didn't turn around. "It's temporary, Mom. Temporary. The word people use when they don't want to explain." His wife finally looked at me. "It's complicated." That smile. Small. Controlled. Too calm. I ignored it at the time. That was my mistake. That night I couldn't sleep. Suitcases. 2 large ones. Not small weekend bags. Large. Heavy. Permanent looking. At 11:43 p.m., I heard whispering. Then, my name. I froze. "She won't say no." That was my son's voice. "She doesn't have anyone else," his wife replied. Silence. Then a soft laugh. Not loud, but sharp. And something inside me shifted. Why would they assume I wouldn't say no? What did they think I didn't know? At 12:18 a.m., my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. But something told me to answer. A woman's voice. Soft. Professional. "Mrs. May, this is regarding your property file." My heart stopped. "I think there's been a mistake." "What mistake?" I whispered. Pause. "Someone requested access to your house transfer documents yesterday." Yesterday. They showed up today. Coincidence? Or preparation? I didn't tell them about the call. Not yet. I wanted to observe. And when you start observing your own child, you realize how much you ignored before. At breakfast, my daughter-in-law reorganized my kitchen cabinets. Without asking. At lunch, my son took a call in the backyard. Whispering again. When I walked outside, he ended it immediately. Too quickly. "You don't trust me," he said. He didn't sound angry. He sounded careful. That scared me more. That evening, something happened. Small, but humiliating. I reached for the remote control in my living room. My living room. My son took it from my hand. "We're watching something." "We." Not you. "We." After everything I sacrificed. When did I become a guest? And then I saw it. His wife's laptop was open on the dining table. A scanned document on the screen. I wasn't wearing my glasses, but I could read one word clearly. Authorization. Under it. My name. Why would they need authorization? Unless someone had already changed something. That night, I opened my old filing cabinet. The house deed was still there, but the envelope felt thinner. I pulled everything out and found something I didn't remember signing. A photocopy. My signature. But the date was last month. I hadn't signed anything last month. Had I? Or had I? I didn't sleep again. And at 3:02 a.m., I made a decision. I would stop staying quiet for peace, because peace was costing me everything. But I still didn't know. Someone had already moved money out of my joint emergency account, and that discovery was coming the next morning. The account that wasn't empty but wasn't mine either. The bank message arrived at 9:06 a.m. I stared at it 3 times. Large withdrawal processed. My hands went cold. I never make large withdrawals. Not without planning. Not without writing it down in my notebook. And yet, the amount was almost everything in my emergency savings. The money I saved after my husband passed. The money meant for medical security. The money I told no one about. Except my son. I walked into the kitchen slowly. They were laughing. Laughing. My daughter-in-law was showing him something on her phone. When they saw my face, they stopped. What happened? My son asked. Too quickly. There's money missing, I said. Silence. Not confusion. Not surprise. Silence. Then, it must be a bank error. His wife said it, not him. That detail mattered, because he didn't deny it. He waited, watching me, measuring my reaction. I'm going to the bank, I said. My son stood up immediately. I'll come with you. No. Why would he need to come? I can manage. His jaw tightened, and for the first time, I saw something I didn't recognize. Calculation. At the bank, the manager pulled up the transaction history. Authorized transfer, she said. Digital signature verified. My heart pounded. Can you show me? She turned the screen. There it was. My name. Electronic signature. Time-stamped. From inside my house. 2 nights ago. 2 nights ago. The night I took sleeping medication. The night I slept unusually deeply. The night they were whispering. Is that your email? The manager asked. It was, but the password had been changed. I never changed it. I felt stupid, old, careless, humiliated, after everything I sacrificed. When did I become this blind? When I returned home, they were waiting, not worried, waiting. Well, my son asked. Everything's fine, I said, and I smiled. For the first time in years, I lied to my child, because I needed to know how far they would go. That night, I checked something I hadn't opened in months. The small CCTV system my neighbor insisted I install after a break-in on our street. I rarely used it, but I remembered. It recorded internal hallway footage too. I scrolled to 2 nights ago. 11:56 p.m. My bedroom door opened. Slowly, my son stepped inside. Alone. He stayed for 6 minutes. 6 minutes. When he came out, he was holding my phone. I paused the video. Zoomed in. His face wasn't guilty. It was determined. That hurt more. I didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, I called someone I hadn't spoken to in years. My name is Nana May, I said, and I think my son forged my authorization. The lawyer was quiet for a moment. Then he said, do not confront them yet. That was the moment something shifted, because I stopped being prey. But I still didn't know something worse. The property file wasn't just accessed. A draft transfer agreement had already been prepared, and my daughter-in-law's name was listed as future owner. And tomorrow, they were planning something I wasn't invited to. The message came at 10:12 a.m. Family group chat. 32 people. Cousins. Aunts. Neighbors who still call me Sister May. My phone vibrated once. Then again. Then again. I opened it. A photo. My dining table. Covered in food. Plates I didn't take out. Decorations I didn't buy. Caption. Small family gathering tonight. Big news coming. Posted by my daughter-in-law. Pause. My heart didn't race. It sank. Because I was sitting in the living room. And no one had told me. One question kept repeating. Why announce something in my house without telling me? I stood slowly. Walked toward the kitchen. They were whispering again. My son stopped when he saw me. You're early, I said quietly. He blinked. Early for the big news. His wife forced a laugh. Oh, that. We were going to tell you. Going to. But hadn't. I nodded. And what is the news? Silence. He looked at her. She looked at him. Finally, he said, it's just a dinner, Mom. Just a dinner. Then why 32 people? Why decorations? Why the new tablecloth? The one from the top cabinet. The one I only use for anniversaries. I didn't argue. I walked back to my room. Closed the door. Sat on my bed. After everything I sacrificed. When did I need permission to know what was happening in my own home? I stayed quiet for peace. But peace was starting to taste like humiliation. At 1:30 p.m., a delivery arrived. A banner. I watched from the hallway as my daughter-in-law unrolled it. Gold letters. New beginnings. New beginnings. For who? Because no one asked me if I was ending something. At 3:45 p.m., I called my lawyer again. I think they're planning an announcement. He was calm. Good. Good. I don't feel good. He lowered his voice. Mrs. May, sometimes people reveal their strategy when they think they've already won. Won what? The house? The money? My authority? There's something else, he added. The draft transfer document was scheduled for review today at 7 p.m. 7 p.m. The same time as dinner. My stomach twisted. So this wasn't just food and family. This was theater. And I wasn't the host. I was the prop. By 6:30 p.m., the house smelled like roasted chicken and something sweeter. Guests started arriving. My sister hugged me tightly. You look tired, she whispered. I smiled. I didn't sleep much. She didn't know that was an understatement. One by one, people filled my living room. They complimented the decor. Beautiful setup. Such a proud moment. Proud. Of what? No one told me. At 7:12 p.m., my son stood up, tapped his glass. Clink. Clink. The room quieted. He smiled. The same smile he had at his graduation. The same smile I cried over. But tonight, it felt rehearsed. Thank you all for coming, he began. We have exciting news. Exciting. He reached for his wife's hand. She squeezed it. And then, we've decided to take the next step. Pause. In our future. I felt the air change. We're expanding. Expanding what? Family? Business? My confusion must have shown because my cousin leaned toward me. You knew, right? Knew what? My son continued. We've been working hard behind the scenes, preparing for something big. Behind the scenes. Preparing. For months. Months. 8 months ago they moved out. 8 months ago they called me controlling. 8 months ago they said they needed independence. So what were they preparing? Then my daughter-in-law pulled out a folder. Blue. Thick. Official looking. My breath stopped. Because I had seen that shade before. In the bank manager's office. In order to secure our future, she said sweetly, we've been finalizing property arrangements. Property. The word echoed in my chest. My sister looked at me again. You didn't tell me, she whispered. I couldn't answer. Because I didn't know. My son cleared his throat. We want to thank Mom for always supporting us. Polite applause. I felt heat climb my neck. Supporting? When you've sacrificed your whole life for your child, he continued. Sometimes the greatest gift is trust. Trust. The room nodded. Some even smiled at me. Like I was generous. Like I was handing something over willingly. But I wasn't. Was I? He opened the folder. Took out papers. These are preliminary documents for transferring the house under joint ownership. Joint ownership. My ears rang. Joint ownership. With Mom's blessing, of course. Laughter. Claps. My blessing. He looked at me. And in that second, he expected me to smile. To confirm. To play my role. After everything I sacrificed. When did I become a stepping stone? I stood up slowly. The room quieted. Joint ownership? I repeated. My voice was steady. Too steady. Yes, Mom, he said softly. We discussed it. Did we? When? During whispers. During the 6 minutes in my bedroom? During the night my phone was in his hand? I don't remember giving my blessing, I said. Silence. Real silence. Not polite silence. Heavy silence. My daughter-in-law laughed lightly. Of course you did. You said you trust us. Trust is not transfer. Trust is not signature. Trust is not digital authorization at midnight. My cousin shifted uncomfortably. Someone coughed. My son's jaw tightened. Mom, not here. Not here. Public humiliation works both ways. I looked at the banner. New beginnings. Yes, I said calmly. Let's not do this here. The relief in his eyes was immediate. He thought I was backing down. That was my mistake before. Staying quiet for peace. But tonight, peace was not my priority. Truth was. Actually, I added gently, I'd like everyone to stay. The room stiffened. Because my tone changed. Soft, but sharp. There's something I need clarified. My son swallowed. What clarification? I walked toward the dining table, picked up the blue folder, flipped through pages, and there, my name, my digital signature, time-stamped. 2 nights ago. You said I approved this, I said slowly. Yes. He didn't hesitate. That hurt. Then why? I continued. Did the bank confirm that authorization was accessed at midnight while I was asleep? The room inhaled. Together. My daughter-in-law's smile disappeared. Mom, my son mourned quietly. Don't. That word. Like I was a child. I checked the CCTV, I added. Now the air changed completely. He froze, for a fraction of a second. But I saw it. You entered my room. No one spoke. You took my phone. My sister gasped. My cousin's husband whispered, "What?" It was for security, my son said quickly. We were helping you. Helping. By transferring money. By drafting property changes. By planning an announcement before telling me. Then why, I asked softly, is your wife listed as primary future owner? Boom. The silence was explosive. Someone dropped a spoon. My daughter-in-law's face went pale. It's standard formatting, she snapped. Standard? To remove a mother? To replace her name quietly? I didn't shout. I didn't cry. That confused them more. Because they expected emotion. They prepared for it. They didn't prepare for calm. I stayed quiet for peace, I said slowly. But peace should not cost dignity. My son stepped forward. We were going to explain. When? After signatures? After transfer? After my authority disappeared? I ignored the whispers, I continued. I ignored the late-night calls. I ignored the bank alert. Gasps. Now everyone knew about the money. You withdrew from my emergency account. It was an investment, he blurted. Investment. Without telling me. Without asking. Without permission. My sister stood up. Is this true? He looked at the floor. That was answer enough. The humiliation wasn't mine anymore. It was shifting. I felt it. The power moving. Slowly. Subtly. My daughter-in-law tried one last time. You're making this dramatic. Dramatic. I looked at her calmly. No, I said. I'm making it visible. The lawyer's words echoed in my mind. People reveal their strategy when they think they've already won. Tonight, they thought they had. But something they didn't know. The draft they printed was outdated. Because this afternoon, my lawyer filed a temporary property protection order. And tomorrow, the bank would freeze the disputed funds. They didn't know that yet. I closed the blue folder gently. Dinner is ready, I said calmly. You're all welcome to stay. No one moved. Because something had shifted. Not loud. Not dramatic. But undeniable. As guests slowly left, whispers followed them. Not about my generosity. Not about new beginnings. About fraud. About signatures. About betrayal. My son stood near the door. Angry. Embarrassed. Cornered. Why would you do that? He hissed when we were alone. Do what? I asked softly. Humiliate us. Humiliate. The word finally reached him. After everything I sacrificed. When did he forget humiliation goes both ways? I haven't done anything yet, I said quietly. Yet. That word landed heavy. Because I hadn't told him the biggest thing. Not about the lawyer. Not about the freeze order. Not about the clause in the original deed. The clause his father insisted on. The one that activates if coercion is proven. He didn't know. But he was about to. At 11:48 p.m., I received a message from my lawyer. Everything is filed. I stared at it. Then at the hallway. Their suitcases were still there. Unpacked. Claiming space. Temporary, they said. We'll see. Because tomorrow, when the bank calls him instead of me, and when the property registry flags the document, they won't be standing tall. They'll be scrambling. And I won't be staying quiet anymore. The call came at 9:02 a.m. Not to my phone. To his. I was in the kitchen when it happened. He answered casually at first. Hello. Pause. Then his face changed. Not confused. Not surprised. Afraid. I kept stirring my tea. Slowly. Breathing evenly. What do you mean frozen? He said sharply. Frozen. There it was. The word I had been waiting for. My daughter-in-law rushed in. What happened? He turned his back to me. Lowered his voice. But fear makes people louder, not quieter. There's a dispute flag, he whispered. They're reviewing authorization. Authorization. That word again. The same one printed under my forged digital signature. I took my cup. Walked to the table. Sat down. Calm. He ended the call abruptly. What's wrong? I asked gently. He stared at me, suspicion blooming in his eyes. You went to the bank again. Not a question. An accusation. I sipped my tea. I protected myself. His wife stepped forward. You're overreacting. Overreacting. To money missing. To property transfers. To midnight phone access. Yes. Very dramatic of me. The funds are temporarily inaccessible, he snapped. Temporarily. Funny how that word keeps returning. Temporary, I repeated softly. Like they said about staying here. His jaw tightened. Why would you do this without telling us? Without telling them? I looked at him carefully. When did you start telling me? Silence. Sharp. Heavy. He paced the kitchen. Anger replacing fear. This makes us look guilty. Us. Interesting. I didn't say it. I just watched. Because watching reveals more than arguing. And I was done arguing. At 10:30 a.m., my lawyer called. On speaker. I made sure of that. Mrs. May, he began calmly. The temporary freeze has been acknowledged. No further transfers can occur until investigation is complete. My son's breathing changed. Quick. Controlled. And regarding the property draft, the lawyer continued, the registry has placed a protective notation. Protective notation. My daughter-in-law's hand tightened around her phone. That means, the lawyer added, no modification or joint ownership registration can proceed without in-person verification. In person. With me. Not digital. Not midnight. Not whispers. Why are you doing this? My son burst out. The lawyer paused. Sir, he said evenly, forgery investigations require caution. Forgery. The word hit the room like glass breaking. I didn't look at my son. I didn't need to. I could feel it. His shame. His anger. His panic. After the call ended, silence stretched. Then, you're destroying us, my daughter-in-law said quietly. Destroying. I almost laughed. After everything I sacrificed. When did protecting myself become destruction? I asked for trust, my son said. Trust. He keeps using that word. I gave you trust, I replied calmly. You took access. That difference matters. He stormed out of the kitchen. Door slammed. I flinched. Not from fear. From memory. He used to slam doors when he was 12. Over homework. Over curfew. Back then, I would knock gently. Talk to me. Now. I let the door stay closed. Because I wasn't chasing anymore. At noon, something unexpected happened. My sister arrived. Unannounced. She didn't hug me this time. She walked straight to my son. Is it true? She asked. He avoided her eyes. That's none of your business. Wrong answer. Your mother carried you for 9 months, she snapped. It's my business. My daughter-in-law stepped in. This is a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding. There's that soft word again. Used to hide sharp actions. I interrupted gently. There's something else they don't know. Both of them looked at me sharply. My sister leaned closer. What else? I walked to my bedroom. Opened the old wooden box under my bed. The one my husband kept locked for years. I brought it back. Placed it on the table. My son stiffened. What is that? Your father's contingency file, I said quietly. His face drained. Because he remembered. The conversations. The warnings. The clause. You always thought the house was simple, I continued softly. Owned by me after he passed. He swallowed. It is. No, I said gently. It isn't. I opened the file. Carefully. Inside, the original deed. And an addendum. Signed by my husband. Notarized. Hidden. My sister gasped. You never told us about this. I didn't. Because my husband asked me not to. Unless necessary. Unless protection was needed. Unless family turned into pressure. I read it slowly. In the event of coercion, manipulation, or unauthorized transfer attempts by direct heirs, full ownership shall be transferred into irrevocable trust protection. Irrevocable. Trust protection. My son's voice cracked. That's ridiculous. No, I said calmly. That's foresight. Your father saw something I refused to see. My daughter-in-law stepped forward. This is emotional blackmail. Blackmail. I shook my head. No. It's legal defense. My sister looked at my son. Did you really try to take her house? He didn't answer. And that silence said more than any excuse. At 3:15 p.m., his phone rang again. He hesitated before answering. I watched his face, listened carefully. "What do you mean investigation?" he whispered. "Investigation. The bank doesn't use that word lightly, especially when digital signatures are involved." After the call, he looked at me differently. Not as mother, not as obstacle, as threat. "You've gone too far," he said quietly. "Have I? Or did I finally go far enough?" "I stayed quiet for peace," I told him. "But peace without respect is surrender." He stared at the floor. The shift was visible now. Power, moving, returning, but something still felt incomplete. Because I knew my son, and panic makes desperate people dangerous. At 6:42 p.m., I heard whispering again. Different tone, urgent. My daughter-in-law said something sharp. Then, "We can still fix this." Fix? How? By apology? By pressure? By manipulation? Or by something worse? At 8:11 p.m., I received a notification. Property registry alert. Someone attempted to access the draft file again. From inside my house. They were still trying, even after the freeze, even after the warning, even after exposure. That was the moment something inside me hardened. Because this wasn't fear. This was intention. I walked into the living room. They were both on their laptops, frozen when they saw me. "Trying again?" I asked softly. No answer. "You said it was misunderstanding." Silence. "You said it was trust." Silence. "You said I was overreacting." Silence. "After everything I sacrificed. When did I become the obstacle to remove?" "I'm meeting the investigator tomorrow," I said calmly. That caught their attention. "Investigator?" my son asked sharply. "Yes." I watched him closely. "And I will bring CCTV footage." Boom. His composure cracked. "Mom." "No." I raised my hand gently. "No more midnight entries. No more whispered planning. No more pretending I didn't see." My daughter-in-law stood up abruptly. "This is insane." Maybe. Or maybe sanity finally arrived. And then, he said something that hurt more than everything else. "If you go through with this, don't expect us to stay." Stay. There it was. The threat. The emotional weapon. Leave. Abandon. Punish. I looked at the suitcases. Still half unpacked. Still temporary. And something unexpected happened. I didn't feel fear. I felt clarity. "If you stay," I said softly, "you stay with honesty. If you leave with consequences." His breathing changed. Because he realized I wasn't begging. I wasn't pleading. I wasn't negotiating. I had stopped being afraid of losing them. At 10:03 p.m., I received one final message from my lawyer. "The trust activation draft is ready. Awaiting your confirmation." Trust activation. Once triggered, the house would no longer be individually transferable. Not by me. Not by them. Locked. Protected. Permanent. I stared at the message. Then at my son's closed bedroom door. Because activating it meant something bigger. It meant accepting that protection was necessary for my own child. That hurts. More than fraud. More than humiliation. More than public exposure. But I also knew something else. They didn't show up with suitcases because they were desperate. They showed up because they thought I was weak. They thought guilt would control me. They thought motherhood equals surrender. They miscalculated. At 11:58 p.m., I typed one word to my lawyer. Proceed. Sent. The message delivered. And in that moment, the power fully shifted. They just didn't know it yet. Because tomorrow morning, when the investigator requests device access logs, and when the registry confirms trust activation, and when the bank escalates the case, they won't be planning announcements. They'll be explaining actions. And something tells me they are not ready for that conversation. The knock came at 9:14 a.m. Not loud, not aggressive, measured, professional. My son froze halfway down the hallway. My daughter-in-law stopped pouring coffee. I opened the door. A woman stood there, mid-40s, calm eyes, tablet in hand. "Mrs. Nana May?" Her voice was steady. "Yes, I'm here regarding the disputed authorization request." Disputed? Such a polite word for betrayal. I stepped aside. "Please come in." My son's jaw tightened. He forced a smile. This is unnecessary. The investigator didn't look at him. Sir, I'll need access to the device used for the transaction. Silence. Sharp. Heavy. Because we all knew which device that was. She sat at my dining table. The same table where they planned new beginnings. She didn't open the property file. She didn't ask about ownership. Her first question was simple. Mrs. May, were you aware of the withdrawal before it occurred? No. She typed something. Did you grant physical access to your phone that evening? I hesitated. Then, no. My son shifted uncomfortably. His wife stared at the floor. I'll need both of your devices, she said calmly. Both. That word mattered. My daughter-in-law looked up quickly. Why mine? The investigator met her eyes. Because the transfer confirmation email was forwarded to this address. She turned her tablet toward us. There it was, a copy of the confirmation, forwarded at 12:07 a.m. To my daughter-in-law, not to my son, not to me, to her. That detail changed everything. I ignored it at the time, but now I understood why she smiled that night. This wasn't impulsive. It was coordinated. Please hand over the phones, the investigator repeated. My son hesitated, then slowly placed his phone on the table. My daughter-in-law did the same. Her fingers trembled, just slightly, as the investigator worked. Silence wrapped around us, uncomfortable, revealing. After 15 minutes, she looked up. Mrs. May, do you recognize this? She showed me a screenshot. My bedroom. Dim light. My nightstand visible. Timestamp, 11:58 p.m. Taken from inside the room. My son inhaled sharply, because he knew. The CCTV system automatically syncs still captures to cloud storage. He didn't know that part. This image was accessed, she continued, before the password reset request. Reset. So not only did they use my phone, they changed the password first. That wasn't desperation. That was strategy. Do you deny entering her room? The investigator asked my son. He swallowed. I was checking on her. At midnight. Silence. She typed again. Then she asked something unexpected. Sir, are you currently under financial strain? That question hit him harder than forgery. His shoulders stiffened. That's irrelevant. It may not be, she replied evenly. My daughter-in-law stood up abruptly. We don't have to answer that. The investigator looked at her calmly. You don't have to, but refusal will be documented. Documented. Such a quiet threat. And then, my son broke. We have some temporary obligations, he muttered. Obligations. That word felt heavier than debt. What kind? The investigator asked. He hesitated, looked at his wife. She shook her head slightly. Too late. He had already opened the door. Business losses, he said quietly. Business. They told everyone they were expanding, growing, thriving. But now, losses. The investigator nodded slowly. Significant. He didn't answer, but his silence was loud. Very loud. Something worse was coming. I could feel it. Because people who are drowning don't ask politely for help. They grab. Mrs. May, the investigator said gently, did you co-sign any recent financial agreements? No. Did you provide access to savings for investment purposes? No. She tapped her tablet again, then paused. There is another matter. Another? My stomach tightened. There was an attempt to use your credit profile as collateral reference. Collateral? Reference? I felt dizzy. I don't understand. She turned the screen toward me. Loan pre-approval request. Using my name. Submitted 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks before they arrived. I looked at my son. Slowly. Carefully. You were planning this before you came back. He didn't deny it. Because denial would require courage. And he didn't have that right now. My daughter-in-law snapped. We were going to tell you. When? After signatures? After loan approval? After foreclosure risk? I ignored the whispers, I said quietly. I ignored the late-night calls. I ignored the new cologne. They both looked confused. Yes, the cologne. The expensive one. Bought when they supposedly had business losses. Little inconsistencies always reveal the truth. The investigator stood up. I will compile a preliminary report. Preliminary. That means it's only beginning, not ending. As she packed her tablet, she turned to my son. Sir, if this escalates to fraud classification, penalties increase. Fraud. The word no longer whispered. Spoken clearly, officially. After she left, the house felt smaller, heavier. My son collapsed into a chair. His wife paced. You had no right, she hissed at me. No right? After everything I sacrificed. When did I lose the right to protect myself? You could have talked to us, he said weakly. Talked. I almost smiled. You entered my room at midnight. He looked away. You changed my password. Silence. You forwarded confirmation to her. No answer. Then the truth slipped. We had investors waiting, my daughter-in-law blurted. Investors? What investors? She covered her mouth too late. My son glared at her. The room shifted again. There was more. Much more. Tell me, I said softly. No anger. Just steady. He shook his head. But pressure builds cracks. And cracks reveal truth. They threaten legal action, he whispered. Legal. They said if we didn't secure assets. Assets. My house. My savings. Me. How much? I asked quietly. He didn't answer. How much debt? Silence stretched. Finally, 300,000. The number sucked the air from the room. 300,000. And they thought my emergency savings would cover it? They thought joint ownership would protect them? They thought using my credit would hide it? When were you going to tell me? I asked gently. His eyes filled. After it stabilized. Stabilized. That word again. Temporary. Stabilize. Trust. All soft words hiding sharp actions. I stood slowly. Walked to the window. Looked outside. After everything I sacrificed. When did motherhood become collateral? You didn't come back for reconciliation, I said quietly. You came back for leverage. He didn't argue. Because he couldn't. But then something unexpected happened. He broke. Not angry. Not defensive. Broken. I was drowning, he whispered. And you thought pushing me underwater would save you? I asked softly. He cried then. Really cried. Like when he was small. And for 1 second, my heart almost surrendered. Almost. But I remembered the midnight entry. The password reset. The collateral request. The coordinated plan. Love does not erase accountability. There's something else, my daughter-in-law said suddenly. Her voice was thin. Shaky. We already signed something. My stomach tightened. What? She looked at him. He looked at the floor. We used your house in preliminary investor presentations. Preliminary. Presentations. Meaning, my property was shown as upcoming secured asset. Without my consent. To people I've never met. That was the moment I realized. This wasn't just desperation. It was reputation risk. If those investors believed ownership was shifting, and now the registry blocks it, they would come looking. Something worse was coming. Not from inside the house. From outside. At 8:27 p.m., my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I answered. A man's voice. Cold. Mrs. May. Yes. We were expecting documentation today. Documentation. My heart slowed. Who is this? Pause. Let's just say your son made commitments. Click. The line went dead. I stood frozen. Because now, this wasn't family tension. This was external pressure. Real. Unpredictable. Potentially dangerous. I walked into the living room. Held up my phone. They're calling me now. My son went pale. My daughter-in-law sat down slowly. What did he say? He asked. He expects documentation. Silence. Absolute. Total. Silence. The house didn't feel safe anymore. Not emotionally, legally, financially, or physically. And for the first time, I realized something terrifying. If the trust activates fully tomorrow, the investors will know the deal collapsed. And desperate investors don't walk away quietly. After everything I sacrificed, had I just protected my house, or triggered something much bigger? The gate opened at 7:36 a.m. No doorbell, no courtesy, just the sound of metal scraping against concrete. I was already awake. I hadn't really slept. When you know strangers believe they have a claim on your home, sleep feels irresponsible. I looked through the window. A black car. Engine still running. Two men stepped out. Suits. Not expensive, but intentional. My son saw them too. He went pale instantly. That's not, he whispered. But he didn't finish the sentence, because he knew exactly who they were. They didn't wait. They opened the front gate themselves, walked up the path, confident, possessive, and that made something inside me go cold. They believed this house was already partially theirs. The knock came 3 seconds later. Sharp. 3 times. I opened the door. Slowly. Yes. The taller man smiled. Professional. Empty. Mrs. Nana May? Yes. We represent Meridian Capital Partners. Capital. Partners. Investors. There it was. My son stepped behind me. Small again. Like a child hiding from a teacher. We're here to collect the signed transfer confirmation, the man continued calmly. Signed transfer. So they weren't just expecting it. They were promised it. I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding, I said evenly. His smile thinned. We don't deal in misunderstandings. Of course they don't. They deal in leverage. My daughter-in-law stepped forward suddenly. Can we talk privately? The shorter man looked amused. We prefer transparency. Transparency. How ironic. My house is not under joint ownership, I said calmly, and no transfer will be happening. The air changed. Instantly, the taller man's eyes hardened. Your son indicated otherwise. I felt my son shift behind me. Weak. Cornered. Desperate. I indicated conditional progression, my son muttered. Conditional. Such a slippery word. The investor looked at him sharply. You indicated secured asset backing. Secured asset. My home. Reduced to a phrase. I did not authorize that, I said clearly. Firm. Slow. Controlled. For a moment, the taller man studied me. Measuring. Assessing. She's activating protection, my daughter-in-law whispered to my son. Too late. I heard it. Protection. Yes. That's exactly what I was doing. We invested based on representation, the shorter man said coldly. How much? I asked calmly. He didn't hesitate. 200,000 already deployed. Deployed. As if this was a battlefield. Maybe it was. My son's voice cracked. It was bridge capital. Bridge. Between what and what? Debt and desperation? And the remaining? I asked. Contingent upon property documentation. Documentation. They believed it was imminent, which meant my son told them it was certain. There will be no documentation, I said. The taller man stepped closer. Not threatening, but not friendly. You understand contractual implications? Yes, I did. Better than they expected. Do you understand forgery implications? I replied quietly. His eyes flickered. Just slightly, because that word changes risk. For everyone. He looked at my son. You didn't mention disputes. My son swallowed. Because disputes reduce investor confidence. And investor confidence equals power. Gentlemen, I said calmly, if you were misled, that is between you and my son. Not me. The shorter man's jaw tightened. We prefer resolution. Of course you do. Investors hate public escalation, especially when documentation trails exist. At that moment, my phone vibrated. Message from my lawyer. Trust activation confirmed. Registry locked. Locked. Permanent. Irrevocable. I didn't react. But something inside me settled. Solid. Grounded. Unmovable. The taller man's phone buzzed seconds later. He glanced at it. His expression shifted. There it was. Registry notification. He looked at my son slowly. You said the transfer was processing. Silence. Thick. Heavy. You assured us ownership adjustment was imminent. My son didn't answer. Because he couldn't. The narrative collapsed in real time. The shorter man turned back to me. This complicates matters. Yes. For you. Not for me. I suggest you consult your legal team, I said calmly, and verify representations made to you. The taller man studied me again. Longer this time. You're prepared for escalation? Escalation. Such a loaded word. I met his gaze steadily. I'm prepared for truth. They stood there for a moment, weighing options, risk versus pressure. Legal exposure versus recovery strategy. Finally, we'll be in touch, the taller man said flatly. Not a threat, not a promise, a warning. When they left, the air inside the house felt different. Not lighter, sharper. My son collapsed into a chair. His hands trembled. They're not patient people, he whispered. I believed him. How much did you actually sign? I asked quietly. He hesitated. Too long. How much? He closed his eyes. 300 total. 300. So they already gave 200. And expected property security for the rest. Meaning, they structured risk assuming my home was collateral. Did you sign personal guarantees? I asked. He didn't answer. That silence was answer enough. My daughter-in-law started crying. They said it was safe. Safe. Predators always say that. Who introduced you to them? I asked. Another pause. An advisor. What advisor? Name. Location. Background. None of it mattered right now. What mattered was leverage. They won't walk away, he whispered. I knew that. Investors don't like humiliation. And this morning, they were humiliated. In front of me. After everything I sacrificed. Had I just turned my son's debt into my danger? At 2:11 p.m., my lawyer called. Expect pressure, he said calmly. From them? Yes, but they are exposed too. How? They relied on unverified ownership claims. So they were careless, or greedy, or both. If they push, he continued, we push back harder. Harder. The word felt foreign on my tongue. I've never pushed hard. I've endured. I've softened. I've absorbed. But now, hard might be necessary. That evening, something unexpected happened. My son came into my room. Knocked first. A small improvement. I messed up, he said quietly. No excuses. No manipulation. Just that. I thought I could fix everything before you found out. Before I found out. So deception was temporary? Or strategic? You used me as solution, I said softly. He nodded. Tears again. I was ashamed. Ashamed. Interesting. Because shame usually stops action. Not fuels fraud. I can't undo it, he whispered. No, he couldn't. But he could face it. Or run from it. They'll come back, he said. Yes, they will. And next time. The call was scheduled for 10 a.m. My son sat at the dining table. Phone in front of him. Speaker on. Hands trembling. I didn't sit beside him. I sat across. Not as mother. As witness. At 9:58, he looked at me. Should I apologize first? Interesting question. Because apology without strategy is surrender. Tell the truth, I said calmly. Nothing more. Nothing less. 10 a.m. He pressed call. The taller investor answered immediately. Good. I was expecting this. Expectation. That word always reveals power. Sir, my son began, voice tight, there will be no property backing. No hesitation. No softening. He said it clearly. Good. Silence. Longer than comfortable. Then, you understand the implications. Not a question. A statement. I misrepresented asset status, my son admitted. The air in the room shifted. Because admission changes legal posture. Dramatically, the investor's tone cooled. You exposed us to reputational risk. Exposed. Interesting. So they cared about their image too. Good to know. I will cooperate, my son continued. Cooperate. That word reduces aggression. Sometimes. The investor spoke slowly. You signed a personal guarantee. There it was. I closed my eyes briefly. Personal guarantee. Meaning, the debt attaches to him. Not me. Not the house. Him. For the full amount, my son whispered. Yes. Boom. Final. Heavy. 300,000. Attached to his name. Not mine. You indicated family support. The investor added that deliberately. Testing me. Even through the speaker. I leaned forward. This is Nana May speaking. Pause. Subtle shift. Yes, he replied carefully. I am not collateral. Silence. You were represented as such. I was misrepresented, I corrected calmly. That distinction matters. Legally, morally, strategically. The investor exhaled slowly. You've activated registry protection. Not a question. He already knew. Yes. Why? Why? After everything I sacrificed? That question still shocks me. To prevent fraud, I said evenly. Direct. Clear. Unemotional. There was a new tone in his voice now. Less confident. More calculating. You've complicated resolution. Resolution. You mean recovery. You mean control. Your advisor encouraged asset assurance, my son added quietly. Ah, now we were getting somewhere. The investor's voice sharpened. Which advisor? My son hesitated. Wrong move. Name, the investor pressed. He gave it. And I watched something fascinating happen. The investor went silent. Longer than before. Interesting, he said finally. Interesting is rarely neutral. We will verify internal communication, he added carefully. Internal. Meaning, the advisor may have overpromised, overstated, overstepped, which shifts liability away from us, toward them. You misled us, the investor said finally. To my son, not to me. That mattered. Power had shifted. After the call ended, my son looked exhausted, but lighter. Confession reduces weight, even when consequences remain. At 12:42 p.m., my lawyer called. They're retreating. Retreating. Such a powerful word. Why? I asked. Because their advisor exceeded authority. Exceeded. Which means documentation trail exists. Which means exposure risk exists. Which means they prefer quiet adjustment. Not court. Not scandal. And the personal guarantee. I asked. Still binding, he said calmly. Of course. Consequences don't vanish. They relocate. When I told my son, he didn't argue. He nodded slowly. I'll work, he said. I'll fix it. This time, no shortcuts, no midnight entries, no digital signatures. But peace never comes cleanly. At 3:17 p.m., the advisor called. Directly. Not my son. Me. I answered. His voice was smooth. Too smooth. Mrs. May, misunderstandings happen. Misunderstanding. That word again. A favorite disguise. You encouraged asset representation, I said calmly. He chuckled lightly. I encouraged optimism. Optimism. Optimism doesn't alter registry filings. Optimism doesn't draft joint transfers. You implied family cooperation, he continued. I implied nothing, I replied. Pause. Then his tone changed. Colder. You've disrupted structured recovery. Structured recovery. That sounds sophisticated, but it smells like pressure. I protected my property, I said evenly. And your son's debt? There it was. The emotional hook. He thought I would fold. Guilt. Motherhood. Sacrifice. After everything I sacrificed. He thought I would surrender again. No illegal backing, I said clearly. No manipulation. No pressure. Silence. He wasn't expecting firmness. He expected softness. You realize your son's repayment timeline accelerates without collateral. Accelerates. Meaning, they may demand faster repayment. Higher pressure. More calls. More tension. That is between him and you, I said calmly. The line went quiet. You're unusually composed, he noted. I almost smiled. Yes, because something changed inside me. I stayed quiet for peace, I said softly. But peace without boundaries invites exploitation. He ended the call without goodbye. Interesting. That evening, something unexpected happened. My son came to me. Not defensive. Not desperate. Resolved. I'll sell my car, he said. The expensive one. The new one. Bought during business expansion. I nodded slowly. That's a start. I shouldn't have touched your money, he whispered. No justification. No blaming. Just truth. That mattered more than apology. My daughter-in-law approached later. I thought you'd forgive us quietly, she admitted. Quietly? Yes. That was the pattern. Forgive. Absorb. Adjust. But not anymore. You confused love with permission, I said gently. She didn't argue. Because she knew. At 9:02 p.m., an email arrived. From Meridian Capital. Subject, revised recovery terms. Revised. Not escalated. Revised. Meaning, they recalculated risk. They chose containment, not attack. My lawyer reviewed it. They're reducing pressure, he confirmed. Why? Because fraud documentation makes them vulnerable too. Vulnerable. That's the word. Power reverses when vulnerability shifts. For the first time since the suitcases arrived, the house felt steady, not peaceful, but stable. And then, my son said something I didn't expect. If we leave, will you ever trust me again? Trust. We circle back to it. Trust isn't restored by words. It's rebuilt by boundaries. I don't know, I answered honestly. Honesty feels cruel sometimes, but it's clean. At 11:30 p.m., I walked past their room. Suitcases open, clothes folded, not scattered, organized. They were preparing, not to claim, but to leave. Temporary. The word finally made sense. Before sleeping, I checked the registry one more time. Trust protection active, irrevocable, secure. My husband's foresight saved more than property. It saved dignity. But something still lingered. The advisor's final tone. Too calm, too controlled, like someone planning a different move. And I've learned something important lately. When pressure disappears too quickly, it doesn't vanish. It redirects. After everything I sacrificed, was this the end of the storm? Or just the eye of it? Because tomorrow, my son will sign a structured repayment plan. And once his name is locked legally, there will be no more shortcuts, no more manipulation, no more collateral fantasies. But I can't shake one thought. If the advisor exaggerated asset backing to investors, how many others did he convince? How many families were told similar stories? And what happens when those families refuse to? Something tells me this isn't just about my house anymore. The first suitcase clicked shut at 6:12 a.m. I heard it from my bedroom. That hollow zipper sound. Final. Not temporary anymore. I didn't rush out. I didn't cry. I lay still, listening, because sometimes the quiet moments carry more weight than shouting ever did. 8 months ago, they left in anger. Doors slammed, words thrown like knives. This time, no yelling, no accusations, just folding, packing, careful movements, almost respectful, almost. At 6:28 a.m., my son knocked. Softly, not like a child demanding attention, like a guest. Yes, I answered. He opened the door halfway. We'll be out by 9. Out. Such a small word, but it echoed loudly. I nodded. That's fine. No drama. No guilt. No pleading. He hesitated, as if expecting something else. Maybe tears. Maybe forgiveness. Maybe a last-minute surrender. He got none. After everything I sacrificed, I learned something. Love without boundaries becomes permission for harm. And I was done granting that permission. At breakfast, we sat at the same table where the investors once stood. Same chairs, different energy. My daughter-in-law avoided my eyes. My son looked at his coffee like it held answers. I signed the revised repayment plan, he said quietly. Good. Adult decisions. Adult consequences. They reduce the interest, he added. I nodded. Because they don't want scrutiny. He looked up sharply. You knew. Yes. When you stop reacting emotionally, you start seeing clearly. Silence returned. Heavy, but not violent. There's a difference. At 8:03 a.m., the black card didn't return. No threats. No intimidation. Just morning light. Normal sounds. Birds. Distant traffic. Life continuing. My daughter-in-law finally spoke. I underestimated you. Underestimated. Interesting word. I'm not a strategy, I said gently. I'm your mother-in-law. She looked down, because that's what she forgot. They both did. You think we only came back for money, my son said quietly. I held his gaze. Did you? He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Yes, honesty. Late, but honest. I was drowning, he whispered. I believe that. Desperation changes people, but it doesn't excuse deception. I would have helped, I said softly. He looked confused. What? I would have helped if you had asked. That hit him harder than anger, because he knew it was true. But you didn't ask, I continued. You planned. You coordinated. You accessed. You assumed. An assumption is where respect dies. He nodded slowly. I thought if you knew the full amount, you'd panic. 300,000. Yes, I would have panicked. But panic is temporary. Fraud is permanent. At 8:47 a.m., the second suitcase rolled across the floor. The same sound as the night they arrived, but different meaning. Then, the final one. 3 total. 3 heavy reminders of a lesson learned too late. Before leaving, my son stood in the doorway. The same doorway where he once said, "We're staying." Today, he didn't make declarations. He asked a question. Can I come back someday? That question wasn't about the house. It was about relationship. I took a breath. I don't know yet. Honest. Clean. Painful. My daughter-in-law stepped forward. I'm sorry, she said. No excuses. No deflection. Just that. I nodded once. Forgiveness isn't a door you fling open. It's a process, and processes take time. They walked out at exactly 9:02 a.m. The gate closed. This time, they didn't leave it open. That small detail mattered. The house felt bigger instantly, but also emptier. Not physically, emotionally, because even conflict fills space. And when conflict leaves, silence can feel unfamiliar. I walked through each room slowly. Guest room, empty. Living room, chairs aligned. Kitchen, organized. My bedroom, door untouched. Phone on nightstand, where it belongs. I sat on my bed. After everything I sacrificed, did I win? Is this what winning feels like? Protection, boundaries, distance. At 11:13 a.m., my phone vibrated. Unknown number. Again, my heart tightened briefly, but I answered calmly. Yes, a woman's voice. Nervous. Mrs. May, I got your number from someone. Pause. Did your son work with Meridian Capital? My stomach dropped. Yes. Silence. Then, they told us our family property would be secured too. Another family. Another house. Another mother. I think we were misled, she whispered. There it was. The pattern. The advisor. The exaggeration. The asset illusion. It wasn't just us. I listened carefully. Didn't interrupt. Didn't react emotionally. Because now, I understood something bigger. This wasn't only about my home. It was about a strategy used repeatedly. Target families. Encourage optimism. Imply secured assets. Push urgency. Collect capital. Shift risk. After the call ended, I contacted my lawyer. He wasn't surprised. These cases rarely isolate, he said. Rarely isolate. Meaning, documentation may reveal multiple victims, multiple representations, multiple secured homes. Will it escalate? I asked. Possibly, he replied calmly. Escalation again. That word returns often. But this time, I wasn't afraid, because I had already crossed the hardest line. The line where a mother stops protecting her child from consequences and starts protecting herself. At 2:45 p.m., my son texted. We found a small apartment. Small, appropriate, necessary. I'll manage, he added. I believed him. Not because he's perfect, but because pain teaches faster than comfort. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in months. I cooked only for myself. 1 plate, 1 glass, 1 chair. No tension, no whispers, no strategy, just quiet. But quiet doesn't mean finished. At 7:22 p.m., my lawyer called again. There's movement, he said. What kind? Internal audit at Meridian. Audit. Investigation. Exposure. Interesting. They're distancing from the advisor, he continued. Of course they are. Liability management. Standard corporate behavior. Will they pursue my son further? I asked. Unlikely aggressively, he replied. They don't want court discovery. Discovery reveals patterns. Patterns reveal systems. Systems reveal intent. And intent reveals exploitation. I ended the call slowly, and for the first time, I felt something unexpected. Not anger, not fear, relief. Because the storm wasn't swallowing me. It was exposing something larger. At 9:10 p.m., my son called. Not desperate, not panicked. Calm. I sold the car, he said. Good. Adult step. I'll start consulting work next week. Better. I won't touch your accounts again. The fact that he had to say that hurt. But I appreciated it. Mom, yes, thank you for not covering for me. That surprised me. Why thank me? Because if you had, I wouldn't have stopped. There it was. The truth. Sometimes protection delays growth. Sometimes consequence builds it. After everything I sacrificed, maybe the hardest sacrifice was letting him face himself. Before sleeping, I checked the registry once more. Trust protection active, irrevocable, secure. But something caught my eye. A notation update. Inquiry logged by Regulatory Review Office. Regulatory, not investor, not advisor. Bigger, official. I stared at the screen. Because if regulators are reviewing asset misrepresentation cases, that means more complaints surfaced, more families called, more houses almost transferred, more mothers almost manipulated. And suddenly, this story didn't feel small anymore. They showed up with suitcases and left crawling. Yes, but what if they weren't the only ones misled? What if this wasn't just about debt, but about a network built on assumed parental surrender?